Hello and welcome everybody to the Speaker Series. Today we're covering Don't Miss the Electric Bus for Worker Safety at Heights and Cantilevers. I'm Katie Spica, I'm the CEO of Spica Design and Manufacturing. With me today is Becky Spica, the Director of Sales and Marketing here. Becky, do you want to introduce yourself?
That's it. I'm part of the family business and I'm working currently in sales primarily and helping out with marketing.
Great. And we're also joined by Tom Spica, who's the founder and our Chief Innovation Officer. Tom, do you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah, hi, I'm Tom Spica. I started the company about 20 years ago. It's grown far beyond what I've ever imagined it would, and we have really started making our mark on the world with some really unique, innovative products, and very excited for where we're at right now and where we're going to. So glad to be a part of this.
Great. And today I'm really excited to introduce Bill Serenbetz, who is our featured subject matter expert. Bill is a fleet assistant manager at Pierce County Public Transportation Benefit Area Corporation, or Pierce Transit, where he is responsible for the safe and efficient maintenance of over 1,000 pieces of fleet equipment and management of the 40-plus personnel tasked to do it. Pierce Transit is a nationally recognized leader in the public transportation industry, providing the second largest county in the state of Washington with world-class transportation services, clocking nearly 10 million rides last year in a 300 square mile area, getting people to jobs, shopping, schools, and more. Prior to Pierce Transit, Bill had an impressive career with the United States Air Force, serving as crew chief for the C-141 and C-17 aircraft, with knowledge of all aircraft systems and their interoperability, managing up to 35-person crews of multi-skilled personnel, involving hydraulics, avionics, electronics, and jet engine specialists, and maintaining assets in excess of $249 million. He eventually moved into learning and development and was a sole subject matter expert for all Air Force training and personnel management, directing 14 program managers and over 550 personnel to comply with Air Force and civil operation training requirements. After his retirement from the Air Force, Bill was employed as an instructional system designer for Booz Allen Hamilton, until he found his current position with Pierce Transit. Bill, we're so happy to have you here as our featured subject matter expert. And I was wondering if you want to start off by telling us what it takes to maintain more than 1,000 pieces of fleet equipment and what adjustments are being made as the fleet switches over to electric buses.
Well, thank you very much for the introduction. And I can tell you right now, it's no small feat working through the daily challenges with trying to keep the fleet rolling and making sure our customers out in the Greater Pierce County area are able to get to their appointments and anything else they so desire. The shift that's happening right now, especially out here in Washington State, is being driven basically by three motivators, one being political, one being regulatory, and the last one being a cultural shift as people see the electric vehicle as the future of transportation. Our main driver is that Washington State law mandated the conversion to alternative fuel vehicles starting back in 2015. They mandated that 30% of our new vehicle purchases will be alternative fuels. We got a small reprieve back in the 80s. Pierce Transit shifted to compressed natural gas, and that's bought us a little time as that's considered an alternative fuel vehicle. But as those regulations tighten in terms of emissions, CNG is beginning to fall out of favor with the regulatory folks involved. So that's really the primary driver for our switch. But there are some other benefits involved with an electric vehicle fleet, and we can get into that a little bit later.
Awesome. Let's go ahead and talk then about some of the specific access challenges you've experienced.
So some of the specific access challenges that come along with electric vehicles is that there's more and more roof-mounted equipment. The increased inspection criteria required to go through and maintain that equipment forces our employees obviously up to greater heights. And once you break that 4-foot barrier, you start talking about life-threatening and life-altering injuries that do occur. The other thing is the shop that we're working out of is currently 40 years old. So when it was initially designed, it was designed for fossil fuel vehicles, which most of the drive components are at the floor level or underneath the coach. So we are currently looking for creative solutions to that particular problem. Also, when we built the shop, we designed the coaches, designed the maintenance bays for coaches that were 92 inches wide. Currently, they're at 102 inches wide, and that has really eaten up a lot of our space in the bays. So once again, we were looking for creative solutions, and as luck would have it, we happened across Spica.
Tom, do you want to talk a little bit about how we approached those challenges?
Yeah, the challenge that Bill speaks of is a relatively common one, and definitely with electric buses, you're running into more of those maintenance requirements up on the upper levels. And we've been able to really offer a number of different options that allow the user to access where he needs to be very efficiently. I believe Bill is using to start with, some of the very basic platforms that are quite mobile, easy to move into place and out of place. And what he talks about with his facility of being somewhat outdated for what the equipment has evolved to, and the fact that you never quite have the room that you need when you're actually trying to perform maintenance operations, it's a real challenge to be able to get equipment that is small enough to fit within the space and yet gives you the safety and versatility to access. We've actually supplied kind of across the whole board of different products, depending on the facility's needs. If you have a very few pieces of equipment, something like is shown here on the screen is very useful. It can be made quite narrow, very economical, and it can have height adjustability ranges that will get you up to where you need to be. At times, this is if you're something like this servicing from the platform, you aren't necessarily up on top of the bus. You're working around the sides of it or the front. Sometimes you need access up around the windshield area and so on. And we can design things like this that are very straight and universal, or we can do them that are fitted to the front contour of the bus. So when you push them up there, it doesn't leave any gaps for you to drop through. A lot of our platforms have what we call sliders on them that allow the front to actually extend out and conform to the object that it's going up against. So there's a number of different options on these. Of course, height adjustability, how far you need to range, your low point and your high point. So we work with somebody like Bill. We try and gather all that information of where do they need to be, what are the extremes. A lot of times we'll look at how often you're needing to get there and other factors, what's in the area that we may need to be concerned about, obstacles there and storage and so on. As we progress up, you take a facility that works with that is handling a lot of vehicles. It at times can be really advantageous to go as far as actually creating a maintenance bay that is specific for the top access on buses. And that can be basically consist of a work platform, the full length of the bus on each side with a crossover rail that front and back of the bus. So it actually provides a complete full safe work zone on top of that bus. And it can be designed so that it's basically a tunnel that you pull into. It can be elevated up high enough that everything clears as you drive into this bay, and then lowered down to the appropriate height so that your railing is correct with the bus and the sides brought inward so that, and they're, they just freewheel. So you would actually just push the two sides together and you've created a dock.
Let's go ahead and pull up. We've got a picture of that. Everything you just described. Let's go ahead and go look at that. There we go. Perfect.
Yeah, this is very similar to that. And this one here was designed to actually work with the manufacturing of buses like this. And at the low setting here, it allows access to the upper half of the sides and up around the top corners. And then as it elevates up to the higher level, it's basically flat from one platform to the top of the bus and back across to the other one. And you'll see those crossover rails at the front and back that provide protection so you don't topple off the ends of them. But to have something like this in a relatively small footprint, if width is an issue, the stairs can be mounted off of the ends rather than the sides. You can make the deck themselves narrower than what it is here to try and actually fit within limited space. But this is kind of the opposite end, or the far end of having something that is used basically constantly. And as soon as one bus pulls out, the next one pulls in and it slides back together again, and practically zero setup time for that. So it's, at this to everything in between. And it's typically working with the customer to find out really what are their needs, what are their limitations, and being able to design exactly what's going to serve them well.
Becky, do you have any experience you'd like to talk about with some of the other challenges we've seen?
Well, I think in general, when we're approached by people in bus maintenance specifically, like Bill was saying, space is always an issue. And so when we show people a system, maybe like what's shown on the screen here, it's not really feasible with their current facility because there's just too much footprint taken up with something like that. So I guess, Bill, I'd toss this over to you. If we can maybe go back to slide 10, I think, 10 or 11. This is actually one of the systems I believe you have in-house, potentially the one that they call the Stairway to Heaven. Yeah, this one. And this one, I guess, I don't know if you would mind sharing a little bit about how this is used, because this may be something that would be more useful for people especially that have space constraints in their facilities.
Certainly. So when we started the discussion with Speak in terms of designing this stand, my initial request was safe access to buses that are up on a lift. So when we put our buses, it's similar to any other automotive bay, it's just on steroids. So we put 26,000 pounds of bus in the air, and the mechanics have to get up inside from time to time when they are on the bus, or the bus is on the lift, sorry. And what they were doing was going what I call cowboy over the rail. So they'll put the bus or the stand perpendicular to the bus. So it's basically, no more than the width of the steps sticking out sideways from the bus, but it switches sides from time to time. So I needed to work with Speaka to make sure that we could put the cam locks that they have designed onto each rail, which allowed access and safer access on and off of the stand while it's positioned next to the coach. Mm-hmm. And we went even one step further to integrate the cam locks into the safety railing at the top of the stand, so that if we needed to back this up to the front or the back of the bus, we could just remove that section of railing and they would have safe and easy access to the areas that they were working on. Again, having a good partner and being able to discuss the unique challenges is a lifesaver, literally, for the folks that are working on it. And then in terms of space savings, again, we were able to integrate storage for the rails that aren't being used. So for instance, the one handrail can store on the other handrail. So we're not trying to find a space to put 8 to 10 feet of square tube on the floor somewhere. So it just hangs off the side of the existing safety rail. which is an amazing space saver, because that generally is what happens. We start designing these really cool features, and then when it's not in use, we don't know where to put it. So having that ability is amazing. If I could get you to back up to, let's see, 10, 11, 12, 13, I guess slide 7, I think it is. That one right there. So again, we were able to work with the kind folks at Spica there, and you'll notice the 2 very short rails on the front edge of this stand. When we're trying to get a maintenance stand in here for a bus, and we have literally 29 subfleets around here, we have unique challenges where if we didn't have those short rails up front that were designed with the cam locks again, then we would have gaps in the railing, which is obviously a bad thing when you're trying to keep people elevated, 6 to 10 feet off the floor. So we were able to integrate those short railings that allowed us to fill those gaps and make sure our workers were safe. Additionally, we worked with Spica to change the height of the casters. We have, again, 29 subfleets, so we need to be able to access various sizes of bus. Electric buses are unique as well, with their header signs and their weird mirrors and everything else they're trying to get cool with. The other thing that this stand allowed us to do is accommodate unique features like bike racks. You'll see bike racks on the front of transit buses, and without the large span underneath, we wouldn't be able to push this stand up to the front of the bus. So that was one of the biggest selling points to this stand, because what we had in the past was scaffolding, just cheap painter's scaffolding, which number 1 is rickety, and number 2, it uses a lot of bracing that runs the full length of the stand underneath the working platform. So that is a big selling feature of this particular unit. We were able to buy 2 of these similar stands, and through that process, we also redesigned the access rails on the back side so that they would hang straight down. If you'll notice in this particular stand configuration, the foot rail sticks out at about 35 degrees, which increases the width and makes it difficult to move around the shop. So again, working with the design team, we were able to create a access stair that hung straight down and allowed for greater mobility around the shop. So those are just some of the many features that we've had designed into these stands that have definitely helped us make sure we get this fleet maintained based on all of the crazy configurations we have. So,
I think what Bill's talking about there is really something that we've prioritized throughout our whole history in designing these kind of products. In its basic form, there's not that much to a work platform. I mean, it's a deck and its legs, and there you go. But these different features that we can incorporate and that we've designed, and at times due to a really unique customer requirement, it will drive us to design even another one that proves to be very effective. So the things like the quick removing railing, most systems you'll look at, they use stake pockets and put the railing in. It works, but they're not stable. And if you get them tight enough so where they're stable, you can't get them in and out. We came up with what we call a cam lock that attaches these down, actually bolts them down to the deck very firm, but you don't need wrenches to take them off. You lift the handle, uncam it, and screw it out, and all your hardware and everything is captured there, so it doesn't get away from you. The clear span underneath is really important in a lot of instances where you're either spanning over something, or at times when they're tall, you'll have people working up above on an area and have access down below as well. And that can be really important in some operations. So again, I think Bill would probably agree that we spend a lot of time with the customer figuring out, what does he need and what can we do that is going to be specific to helping them within their own operation. And we'll have people call looking for a platform, and they'll say, what's the dimension of this and what's the price on it? Well, it's really hard. We don't have that. we work with every customer to figure out what exactly size and height and adjustment range do you need, and do you want to crank this up manually, or do you want to use electric actuation? Do you want a stair? Do you want a ladder? All these different options. Sometimes I fear we overwhelm them with options that they can have. But when you're investing in a piece of equipment, you expect this to last you for years, and we do not want you getting it and after 3 months saying, man, I wish we would have had it like this or that. We want to go through with the customer and try and really look at it from all angles, and when we deliver that product, be pretty well assured it's going to do exactly what they want and make their lives easier, and of course keep them safe.
So this is reminding me a little bit, another major value of a work platform like this is its reconfigurability, or creating it in a way that it can provide the safest access possible, and access that people actually enjoy using, but also access that can meet a variety of needs, which is what we've been talking about. I believe the next slide, let's go 3 slides down. So this is an example of a wraparound system that was designed originally for bus manufacturing. And you can see there's 2 rails toward the back of the picture. This system started out with just 1 railing, so it was comprehensive for 1 bus size. And then it was able, as we kind of redesigned it with the customer, to add an entire second section to the existing system and then add a second rail. So now this wraparound system can accommodate 2 sizes of bus. So this was for the manufacturing sector originally. We've actually enrolled this design to the maintenance sector as well. Of course, it's only really for those that have the space to do something like this, but a part of that discussion with the customer was, we can start with this system like this, and you can start with 1 deck on either side. If you have more of a budget next year, we can add decks to that. If you need to accommodate, a larger bus in the future, we can add decks to that. So trying to work our design so that they can evolve with the customer as they have, especially new coaches and different equipment that they're trying to access. That's always in the back of our minds.
Yeah, the versatility is so important. And like Bill talked about, different sizes of buses with different shapes, different features, different obstacles. You want to be able to design something that can accommodate all those. And like Becky was talking on that last slide, that there's a whole separate deck that actually moves into place at the front, but you also have that ability to locate those crossover rails anywhere along the length of the platforms. So if you have a long bus, you move them, farther out toward the ends. If you have a shorter one, you move them in a little bit. So you basically can enclose the area that you're wanting and needing to have enclosed. Becky also mentioned that you can do 1 deck at a time. We can actually build them to where they support the railing completely from one side, and you only need one side of the bus to have that width. And it doesn't have to be a whole lot of width. We make some of these decks that are 32 inches wide, and the stair goes right in line with them. So that's not taking up a big footprint, but you can have it just on the one side and basically a cage that reaches over the bus and encloses your area. So the versatility is big in what we try and design.
This has been a really good conversation so far. I'm wondering, as we start to head towards wrapping up, if Bill, you'd be interested in sharing with us some of your perspectives on trends in your industry, or any advice you have for others facing the similar access and safety issues as you have been.
Certainly. As I alluded to before, it's the law here in Washington State, and I would assume as we get moving along, more states will follow suit as we start cranking down on the global warming problem. The other thing with an electric fleet is there's reduced maintenance costs. There are less moving parts, and obviously we are not dealing with any of the emission standard and regulations that go along with that. We are still running some fossil fuel coaches in terms of hybrid coaches. Just think of a Prius on steroids, but even those are becoming more troublesome. Generally, we're replacing what's called a diesel particulate filter about every 20,000 miles, and they range anywhere from $5,000 to $7,000. So as those become more cost prohibitive, we'll be getting away from those. The only other downside to an electric fleet is the battery replacement. Again, I'll go back to the hybrids. They're the ones we have the most experience with. When it comes time to replace the battery pack in a hybrid bus, it's approximately $80,000. So that's a future concern that people planning on making the move to electric vehicles need to budget for. So the last couple things I'll leave you with in terms of the future, and sometimes when I bring these things to my leadership team, there's a little sticker shock concerning the stands, but I can justify that very, very easily based on the fact that an average OJI claim is about $91,000 when an employee gets hurt. So when I'm looking at about $15,000 for the stand that we purchased, it pays for itself if it prevents one accident. So that can't be overstated. And the design of the coaches are increasing height requirements for the work, and that's not going away either. As they get more efficient, they want to move these batteries and all of the equipment to the roof because it frees up space in the floor to do all kinds of cool stuff like wheelchair ramps and any other of the ideas that they're cooking up back at the bus factories. They're killing me with that, but some of it's kind of interesting. The lower they can get the bus, the easier it is for passengers to get on and off, which is the primary concern. And if they don't have the space, then where do they move it? They move it to the roof. So those are kind of the future as I see it, and some of the challenges that we're facing. And again, I can't overstate my grateful nature for Spica and their ability to work with us, because I know I was driving them nuts. I was calling back there probably once or twice a week with some kind of different tweak or change, and they took it in stride, and Becky was laughing at me and making her happen. So it's a great partnership, and look forward to future partnerships with you as we design out our fleet.
It's been an absolute pleasure to work with you too. As we wrap up here, Becky or Tom, do you have any thoughts you'd want to share about other industries, some of the challenges they've had or obstacles they've overcome, and how they might be applied to the electric bus users?
Yeah, we can briefly address this. The next slide showcases a system that has a contoured front that, in thinking about it, may be something that could be utilized maybe for the front of a bus, or something that has a little bit more of a radius like that. Tom, I know you were saying that as well. Maybe you have other comments on this particular, maybe potential crossovers from what this was designed for, which was the space industry, into the transportation industry.
There's so many different types of platforms that we design. They're very specific to requirements. I mean, this one here fits up against either a round object, or it can be conical, where as it goes up and down, it contours to that reducing diameter cone. We've got some that you can actually lay down on your belly and you reach down underneath. So if you're working directly over the top of something, instead of being bent over constantly on it, you can lay down, and it's very comfortable and ergonomic to work on the things. So there's just a tremendous variety of different designs that will let you access some very difficult challenges. And I think that's where working with a company like ours, we we really don't, you can't go onto a catalog and buy a Speak of product there, because we're not in business of just selling a generic stand. We're selling solutions for accessing difficult places. And in order to do that, we have to work directly with the user and understand what their challenge is. So, you know, once you contact Becky and her team, they will get some initial information and start showing you some of the options that we have. And once you kind of drill down a little bit farther, if it's if it's really a true challenging requirement, then it gets the design team brought into it, and you'll actually have one of our engineers that works directly with you to try and find out what is our best solution for that. And that's all on our nickel. We don't, we work with you to try and decide, is one of our products going to actually solve your problems? And it's very seldom that we come up with one that we'd have to say, we just don't see how we can do it. So that's a part of the service. We have the understanding of OSHA requirements. We know what you're going to have to be able to comply with. So that's kind of some of our expertise that comes into play as well. But 20 years of designing these platforms for some really challenging situations has made us really somebody that's a valuable partner to you.
Well, let's probably go ahead and wrap up here. Bill, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and your challenges. And you've just been a great partner throughout this whole experience. So thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise.
Thank you for the opportunity.